Hello and welcome back again, my fellow Mobile Legends men. It is I, Shinmen Takizo, looking at you and your big bag of battle points. So are you ready to empty that bag? Or maybe you're thinking twice, because if you are, then you've come to the right place.
You have slain an enemy.
Welcome to another episode of Hero Review, where we'll have a real talk about the good, the bad, and everything I know so far about this new hero, BAXIA, the Turtle Man, and hopefully help you in making that decision if he's worth your 32,000 battle points. He probably is. And again, this is not a guide. Only a fool would be so confident enough to make a guide for a hero that isn't even in the original server. So BAXIA is an out-of-control ball rolling into the battlefield this 8th of October, and he isn't something that we've seen before. Just look at those muscles. But aside from that, this guy can friggin' turn into a bouncing ball, can play Don't Touch the Lava with his enemies, and most of all, deal damage as a tank, which is something we don't see often when looking at tanks. Shut up, Tourist Line Grog, you guys are an exception, alright? But the question is, will he be in the meta? Let us find out. BAXIA's passive is another one of those standard I'm a tank so I'll have a damage reduction passive. But his damage reduction works differently from other tanks. It says in his passive that any damage dealt to BAXIA will be reduced up to 56 points of damage. So you deal 100 damage to him, you take off 56 from that. Now this is very good if your enemy does low damage multiple hits, since you'll be ignoring 56 damage per hit. Heck, if their damage per hit is too low, they'll even end up doing single digits on you. What's bad about this damage reduction passive is if enemies hit you hard with that one burst of big damage worth thousands. Imagine crits or spells that deal like 1,000 damage. The passive will only help you by removing 56 out of that, which is kinda underwhelming if you ask me, especially late game when enemy heroes deal over 1,000 with their crits and their skills. But I guess this is where counter item building comes in, right? Another effect his passive gives is the ability to apply a regen reduction debuff on enemies with whatever skill he uses. So yes, BAXIA is that tank that gets a free Necklace of Durans. He's like the perfect hero to get every time against lifestealers or healers, since you can't trust your teammates to counter build with getting Deadly Blade or Necklace of Durans, right? BAXIA's skill 1 turns himself into a ball. He's the biggest ball in the game so far. So this is where you slowly gain speed, and it lets you jump over obstacles by pressing the skill again. The enemies that you hit will suffer a short stun, it will stop your ball, and everyone else in the area gets knocked back. This skill allows you to travel long distances fast, like from the base to the river, with just one use of the skill. I cannot even begin to explain how monstrous the effect on ganking and teamfight follow-up this skill has to offer. There would be no teamfight out of your reach if you just take the effort, the moment to use this skill, and roll down to wherever the fun is happening. I find myself using this skill all the time while in-game, since walking around would be too slow given that you have this at your disposal. This rolling big ball skill feels like a Johnson ultimate, but you don't really have to be good at driving. The skill doesn't punish you for hitting walls as you keep rolling even with bad driving, and you really don't need godlike sense of timing as the cooldown is pretty short even without cooldown reduction items, so it's somewhat spammable. But here's the catch. Hitting minions or jungle monsters will stop you at your tracks, but you can jump over them. Press the skill again and you do this friggin' high rolling jump, and it will let you jump over walls and enemy minions. But jumping over enemy tanks to get to the back line of the enemy is impossible, because every time you jump over a hero, this skill will make BAXIA automatically crash down on the said hero to stun them and knock enemies back. Now the stun will last 0.5 second more, so in a total of 1 second, and you will deal more magic damage. So this is pretty bad, right? You can't use your rolling jump to get to the back line, but given the boost of speed you get while you're in this ball form, you can just easily go around tanks instead. Now this skill has little to no damage, especially if you build tanky, but the mobility and the roaming potential it has is more than enough to compensate. BAXIA skill 2 is a pretty basic skill. You'll be throwing your shield like your Captain America, dealing magic damage and slowing down enemy movement speed. It goes through minions and it deals linear area damage, but once you hit enemy heroes and jungle monsters, you'll be provided with more added effect. Aside from the damage and the slow effect, you also mark your enemies with this ring that lasts for 5 seconds. And while you keep hitting the same marked target, or the ringed target with this skill, the cooldown is reduced by 85%. It almost has no cooldown at that point, and it deals additional damage based on 5% of the max HP of your target. So similar to carry's passive, right? Only not true damage. This means if you're accurate enough, you can spam this person HP damaging, movement slowing, annoying shield on a single target until it's dead. This may be hard to constantly hit on mobile heroes, but if you're right in their faces, right next to them, they wouldn't really have a chance to avoid it at all. And this skill is exceptionally useful when taking down jungle monster objectives like crabs, turtles, lords, since they're not really moving at all. They can't dodge skills, damn it. You can still apply the mark on them, your cooldown is still reduced to almost non-existence, and you do percent damage on these crucial objective targets. Now it may be too early to tell, but the max HP percent damage of this skill might even be enough to take down enemy tanks in case you decide to like 1v1 with a tank, right? Don't do that. So what's bad about this skill? Well, it's not a stun or a disable. That's what's bad. Sure, the slow effect is there, but sprint and blink skills exist for the enemy. Plus, it can miss, which is another problem. And if you hit another target you didn't initially mark, for example, you hit a first hero, you mark them with a ring, and then you hit another one with your second shield throw, then you'll get screwed with a long ass cooldown and won't be able to use the skill for a while. BAXIA skill 3 or ultimate is another skill that gives movement speed increase and his main source of damage. So that's pretty good. He has movement speed increase on skill 1 and skill 3 also gives that. So you press this skill and you become a walking volcano, leaving a trail of hot lava, damaging enemies who step on it every second. This is the best way to apply your passive's regen reduction debuff to multiple enemies in a team fight. The 10-second duration of the skill isn't laughable as well. It's insane. It's pretty long. Team fights don't even last 10 seconds. And while the skill is active and you're running around walking on fire, you also get a 75% increase in your passive's damage reduction. So that's minus 56 damage earlier, right? So add 75% more of that. Now what I like about this skill is the panic effect it gives to your enemies. Running into them gives them only 2 options really. Try to fight you or disable you, risking the continuous damage from your ult and also getting that heal reduction debuff, or move out of your way while you chase them, giving them no time to retaliate and still end up getting caught since you're faster than them during your ultimate. I really fear for the short-lived time that the healing supports like Rafaela and Estes have in the meta, because they just got back into the meta recently. And now BAXIA rolls in with this healing reducing ult area effect. It is just too devastating, particularly in crowded teamfights and against close range enemies. Now since this video is before his release in the original server, I played a couple of games in the advanced server and I can strongly say that I will personally buy him upon release. And it's not because he's OP, because he's really not. His only stun or knockback on skill 1 barely lasts up to 1 second, so he doesn't really have a strong disable like tanks like Minotaur or Akai to hold down priority damage dealing targets. You are prone to getting disabled and kited since you don't really have any immunity from stuns or CC. Escaping losing teamfights is pretty hard for you if you don't have sprint or flicker, since enemies can just block your way if you try to ball out. His wave clear is also terrible since skill 1 rolling ball move does very little to no damage. Skill 2 has a disgusting cooldown when used on non-hero or jungle monster targets. And his ultimate takes time to kill anything. So yeah, I mean, why are we even talking about this? You shouldn't be clearing waves with tanks. And I wouldn't really recommend wasting ults on minions unless it's necessary. And while he's really good at getting to the enemy backline with his mobility, he may have a hard time keeping enemies from getting into your own backline, like your own marksmen or mages in the backline, because there's very little you can do about it. Aside from the short stun that your skill 1 rolling ball has to give, you can only hope for your continuous damage, fire flow, or ultimate to kill your enemies before they kill your core heroes. So yeah, he has a lot of weaknesses to be exploited once enemies are aware of it, but the mobility in his kit, as early as level 1, his mobility is outstanding. And right now in the meta, mobility I believe is still king. BAXIA is a hero that will be able to keep up with fast-moving mid laners and gankers with his rolling around skill. His ability to respond to team fights is class S, where you'll feel like the whole map is accessible by just turning into a ball. Knocking back enemies and running in front of their escape route with your flaming path is a whole lot of fun, if not for the fact that they can just blink out of it or sprint out of it. So maybe bring Petrify for that, or maybe build Ice Queen Wand for that continuous slow effect on your ult. All his skills are based on magic damage anyway, so a few magic damage items might do you good. But even without magic items, his ultimate, if kept on squishy heroes like marksmen and mages of the enemy team, is pretty devastating. They just can't stay in one place or else they'll be dying. And I guess this is BAXIA's way of stopping enemies from dealing damage to your teammates by keeping the enemy hitters running instead of attacking. And that is what I think of BAXIA at the moment. I rate this hero turtle out of 5. So what do you think about BAXIA? Is he worth it? Let me know if you'll be getting him, or if I missed any information about him, or if you have additional thoughts, please comment it down below. I really appreciate it. And again, my name is Shitman Taxo. Thank you so much for watching. Hope this helps you out, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.